Ghana, one of the fastest growing countries on the continent, and of course also the headquarters of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, have deep ties bilaterally with Namibia since its independence. Now, last year, the two countries signed a historical agreement that allowed Namibia's beef to reach the shores of the Gold Coast. I'm here to discuss a little bit more in detail on that with the ambassador to Ghana, Selma Ashipala-Musavyi. This is Diplomatic Communique. A very good evening to you, and thank you very much for making time out to join us, Ambassador.
Good evening, Ricardo, and thank you for having me.
Well, of course, you are a career diplomat, so I don't even want to even reflect on the tenure since you started at the Gold Coast, because then we'll have to go back a couple of years. I really just want us to take a look at where do our relations currently stand, our bilateral relations with Ghana.
Well, Namibia and Ghana enjoy excellent bilateral relations that were actually established right at independence. This year we had a joint commission between Namibia and Ghana, and the delegation was led by our Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. She was accompanied by several ministers, and that in itself is very significant. Since I went to Ghana, there's hardly a quarter that goes by without a ministerial delegation, as well as some members of the private sector. So I think the political side is excellent. We have no issues with Ghana. Where we need to do some work is on putting economic content to our bilateral relations, because that is what will benefit the two people of our countries.
Well, you're also not accredited to represent Ghana as well. Quite a number of countries, of course, in the region, including Liberia, Benin, Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone, as well as Togo. And what I'm picking up from there is that most of them, of course, are Francophone African countries. Can we just reflect on the bilateral relations, even you can just touch a bit on some of the major ones?
Yes, actually, all of them are major. All in all, I'm accredited to 7 countries, which you have just elaborated. I've only presented letters of credence, basically presenting my letters to the presidents of Cote d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone, and Togo. Now, yes, the majority are Francophone countries, but you know what? All of them, with the exception of Burkina Faso, are coastal states. So what does that mean for Namibia in the context of inter-African trade? So what we are focusing on is to connect NAMPORT to the port authorities of those countries, so that we can actually get a pie of the inter-African trade. But we are also looking at other sectors, for example, agriculture. We have only started now because we were interrupted by COVID, but what I can say is that there's a lot of interest in those countries, especially with our meat and meat products.
And of course, we're having these discussions around how we can improve some of our maritime services, blue economy, of course,
yes,
and trying to open up some of those
yes,
transport corridors. And we know those are major exporters on the belt.
Very, very. And you know, because I always say that we need to look at the Atlantic Ocean or the west coastline, not just in terms of extraction of marine resources, but we need to really look at the sea in its totality. Blue economy, it's total. It's large. It's marine resources. It's water tourism. It's transportations of goods and services. Language should not be a barrier. Let the port authority talk to one another, and I'm sure we can reap benefits from this cooperation.
Talking about benefits from this cooperation, one of the biggest ones that we've seen, of course, has been that agreement that was signed with the Abanga Group to allow Namibian beef to hit the Gold Coast. Reflect a little bit on this. I mean, how important was that? How significant was that, having that agreement in place, and how's it been going so far?
That was actually huge for Namibia, because we've been talking about Namibia being very big in terms of animal husbandry. And until now, Ghana's source market in terms of meat and meat products has been Europe and Latin America. Some of our beef actually have been going to Ghana, but not exported by Namibians or by Ghanaians. Other countries whom I will not mention have been coming here and take our meat. So when I went to Ghana, among my luggages, I took beef to Ghana. And then we just said, how do we get market access for our beef? So we had an event where I was introducing myself as the new High Commissioner of Namibia to Ghana. We had a braai, 3 days. The first day we invited hotel owners and restaurant owners. The second day we invited chefs from these huge hotels. And then the third day we invited diplomats. That's how we landed upon the Abanga groups. So far, everything is going well, but you know, with every beginning, you have teething problems. So what we are doing...
What happened, some of those? If it's not anything that's will jeopardize the agreement.
No, it's just that, you know, when you establish a market, I mean, you have to invest so much in terms of marketing your products. So what we are doing now is to consolidate the market so that there's a periodic flow of containers, but also to go beyond Ghana, because we are targeting all the 7 countries that we are concurrently accredited to. I should say that the reception of our beef in Ghana has been marvelous. Private sector is buying, government is buying, the mining industries. So I think it's really up to us to make sure that we maintain that market.
Talking about maintaining the market, of course, this has also brought renewed excitement to the farmers north of the red line. And that conversation has also seeped into the debate around whether the red line should be removed or whether the red line should be kept. What are your reflections and your thoughts on that?
I think it should really be removed. We need to create market access for every Namibian, irrespective of where you are. And given that the meat which is going to West Africa is coming from the northern communal areas, I think that should be an incentive to our farmers there to also realize that, you know what, we can actually gain something from our cattle. So it has to go together with public education in terms of what is the advantages. Should I have 5,000 head of cattle? Or can I actually improve my production so that I can also benefit from this market? But not only that, I think we shouldn't limit ourselves just to the beef. We should add value. Our sausages, we can send to Ghana, the biltong, boerewors, all these products, they will find a market in Ghana. How do I know? Because every time we have functions at our High Commission, these products go very fast. And everybody's asked, where can we get them? So we tell them, this is where you can get them.
And perhaps I think this also really speaks to us being able to take our products to larger Africa, because most of our good stuff goes to Europe. But what we'll do is we'll leave that one for the break. If you just joined us, you're watching Diplomatic Communique. When we come back after the break, we'll discuss the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, a big driver, of course, in terms of the North-South power and global economic dynamics for us as a continent, when we come back after the break. Welcome back to Diplomatic Communique, our discussion program that focuses on Namibia's foreign missions. And tonight we are speaking to Ambassador Selma Musavyi, and of course the ambassador to Ghana. Ambassador, a bit early on, of course, we started obviously with the discussions around, look, the politics is fine, but let's look at what the economic cooperation looks like. But what makes Ghana so exciting right now is that it's the home to the Africa Continental Free Trade Area headquarters, an agreement that was spoken to be a game changer for trade on the continent. Let me just have your philosophical posturing first before we get into the details. So the importance of this agreement for Africa.
You know, I think the importance of AEFCFTA cannot be overestimated. You recall that we had something that was called NEPAT before, the New Economic Partnership for Africa. That didn't work out well, frankly speaking. Now, for me, this is a game changer because we are trying to integrate the African economy. And this is why the African heads of state have actually signed the agreement. Namibia has ratified it, so we consider ourselves as a founding party of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. I think the significance lies in the fact that we've realized that if we want to integrate the African economy, we have to come together. All of us, big, small, medium, we must work as one. And that in itself is also a challenge, but it's an opportunity for all of us, but it needs work.
And in terms of that work, essentially it kicked off on the 1st of January 2021.
Yes.
It's been a little bit over a year.
Yeah.
As a country, of course, the biggest concern generally for Namibians was, we are a smaller country, we don't export a lot, so we might be flooded with a lot of goods that are coming from West and East Africa. What has been your experience, and is there any merit in that concern?
Yes, there is merit in that concern, but it's a concern that is not unsurmountable. I participate in the African Continental Free Trade Area negotiations. I don't think there's an alternative to the African Continental Free Trade Area, but what Namibia has been advocating is that if we really want this instrument to work, then first we must realize that we are at different levels of development. The big should not dominate, because no African country is too big to go it alone, and none is too small to make a contribution. We need each other. What we need to appreciate as Namibians is that the AFCFTA is basically about selling and buying. Okay? So, if you don't produce, if you don't manufacture, what are you going to sell? Because we are talking about doing away with tariffs. So that is what we need to appreciate. Now, the Ministry of Industrialization and Trade, I think, has come up with a national strategy. And I would really want to implore Namibians to study that strategy, because it's not going to be solidarity. You have to put in work to access the market. As I said, if you are not manufacturing, you cannot sell. But then it's also about services. So Namibia can actually say, which services do we have an advantage?
And where can we perhaps improve in
and,
terms of
and where can
capacity?
we actually improve? Where can we link up with country A, B, and C and say, can we work together, create a niche for ourselves in this market? And that's why I was actually emphatic about the blue economy. What role is NAMPORT going to play? So it's exciting, but we must put in work.
We must put in work. We must stay focused, and that's what I wanted to find out. Because on the goods and the product side, that was ironed out quite quickly when the agreement was signed. But I know last year, when His Excellency Nankela was also here, it was saying that, look, we have to finalize the protocol on services. Has that been finalized, or what is holding it back?
The protocol on services have been finalized. I think the protocol that is now in the offing is the one on digital trade. Now, one thing we need to realize is that with regard to AFCFTA, we actually negotiate a SACU. Now, it has been slow because, as I said, we are at different levels of development. Some African countries have actually not signed the necessary protocol. So what has been decided is that, okay, those of us who are ready, let's come up with a guided trade initiative to say the protocols that have been signed, if there are countries that already want to begin to trade, let's start trading. It's actually as an incentive to push everybody to say, look, time is not with us. We have operationalized this AFCFTA in 2021, and we were supposed to be already trading by that time under the AFCFTA rules. But trade are bread and butter issues.
It's not easy to convince,
honestly,
especially if I'm benefiting from the current regime.
Exactly. And if you are benefiting from the current regime and you feel that, okay, now we need to share this market, there's a bit of resistance. But I think the message coming out of AFCFTA is to say, maybe this is our only chance as Africans.
Which it probably is. I mean, if you look at what's happening globally.
It really is.
But I just wanted to bring in this angle while we're still on the AFCFTA. We know, of course, Namibia follows a monist international law order where all the international trade agreements or whatever we sign, international treaties, have to be domestified, for lack of a better word.
Yes.
What kind of requirements are there from the AFCFTA for us to make it domestic, or is it something that we can just implement in the form that it comes in?
I think the Ministry of Trade started domesticating AFCFTA already. And for me, the beauty of it is that now we have a national strategy which they can actually take and go out with, and especially talk to the private sector, especially the SMEs, to say, this is the instruments, this is how you can access the market. But honestly, I cannot emphasize enough information sharing. Where I am in Ghana, almost every single month, there's a workshop, there's a seminar, there's something on AFCFTA where the government is telling the people, this is what you can do to benefit from, whether it's in services, whether it's in the creative industries, and we need to do the same. But it's important to say that the African Continental Free Trade Area is not just about goods and services. It has got three parts: goods and services and movement of people.
Movement of people, yes.
So now that for us, I think it's a niche for Namibia, because when we talk about movement of people, we are talking about tourism, we are talking about visa, which is actually a complete subject on its own.
Complete subject, but I think when we start with that one, we're probably not going to end today. But just very quickly, before we close off on the AFCFTA, perhaps the absolute low-hanging fruits, particularly in context of our small and sort of medium-sized enterprises.
I think for us is our beef, is for our young people to participate in creative industries, fashion, cosmetics. These are multi-billion industries. We need to give our young people an opportunity and a platform to expose their creativeness. You go to Ghana, you go to Togo, you go to Burkina Faso, these are big industries. And I think Namibia can do the same.
Well, Ambassador, it's time for a quick short break. We'll be back right after this as we look at, of course, the political tensions in the region. Ambassador Musavyi sits on the region that has been hard hit by coups over the last few months. We'll reflect on how that affects continental unity and, of course, how we position ourselves in the global south. Stay with us. Welcome back. Here watching Diplomatic Communique, a discussion program that focuses on our foreign missions and diplomats. Tonight we're joined by our ambassador to Ghana to just reflect a little bit on our relationship between the two countries. We spoke about the economics. Of course, AFCFTA is a big one, but the very, very serious one, and I think where Ghana finds itself, very, very interesting geopolitical makeup of West Africa, is we have had, I think it's 3 coups, speaking under correction, 4 coups so far. This must be a nightmare for diplomacy in the region.
Yes, it is, and fortunately for me, I'm directly affected only by one, Burkina Faso, because I cover Burkina Faso, and the African Union has decided that we are not going to accept unconstitutional change of government, so I can't actually be active in Burkina Faso. But then on a broad...
Is that also our national position as a country?
We are part of the African Union. It is our national position. But then generally in West Africa, I think these are developments that has really affected ECOWAS in great measure. It's a complex political development because you see, these countries have been affected by coups. In fact, since then, I can't really say that ECOWAS has met at that level because the whole concentration is on that political issue. Why do I say it's complex? What do you do when there's a coup in a given state and then you have the population out on the street jubilating? What does that tell you? I attended a conference last week in Togo, and somebody was saying maybe what we need to do as Africans is to seriously engage in early warning mechanism for us Africans to speak truth to one another. Why is it that we come together to talk about when a coup has happened, and when this situation has been simmering, nobody says anything?
But Ambassador, with all due respect, I mean, the thinking and the feelings generally of Africans have been that African leaders look out for each other, even if it's not in the interest of the people on the ground. I mean, we've seen it with Alassane Ouattara in Ivory Coast, the late Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe. Many were saying he was almost 2 decades late because fellow SADC presidents and governments were continuing to support him.
You know, what you were saying is like you were sitting in that room, because this is what was being said in that conference. Now, what I'm saying is complex. Togo invited the foreign ministers of Mali, the foreign ministers of Burkina Faso, the Minister of Interior of Niger, who actually came with his military regalia, and Guinea was also there. Now, what does this tell you?
Well, the existence of ECOWAS and of
with
course
the
also
existence
the
of
African
the ECOWAS. The African Union was also there. But I think somebody there make a point to say, if we want to redress the situations in this country, isolating them is maybe not the answer. Let's engage them. But everybody knows that what needs to happen in those countries is basically taking care of the socio-economic needs of the people.
But what does that engagement mean? Because remember also when the peer-to-peer mechanism started,
Yes.
it was also one of those early warning
Yes.
systems that were put in place to,
Yes.
to deal with this.
Yes.
And the larger question is now, it begs to differ.
Yeah.
Is multilateralism really still working? Can we say that regional blocs have teeth? We know the African Union has already been accused of being toothless bulldog. So now we're having 3-4 different layers of multilateral issues to deal with, and a smaller group of countries that are coming together and say, we are inviting each other and we are talking to each other.
Very true. I think multilateralism could do better if we are even-handed with everybody. Take, for example, the situation in ECOWAS. Burkina Faso was treated differently from the way Niger is being treated. So you ask yourself why. So is Mali. Now, what you are going to get is a mushrooming of associations where like-minded countries will come together and say, maybe we are better off working together, those of us who feel likewise. And where will that leave us? So that is a fragmentation. Eventually, that will be a fragmentation of the African Union. So we've got a lot of work to do at the continental level, to, as I say, to talk truth to one another. Where you go wrong, I mean, your fellow African will look you in the face and say, Selma, I think what you are doing, but if we are just, circumventing the truth, I think we are in for a root shock.
We're going to be in for quite a hectic time as well.
Yes.
And that is really the crux of my concern here.
Yeah.
What does this mean now for ECOWAS as a regional bloc? And the moment we have that fragmentation at that level, then it brings the big question around the African Union. It's already a difficulty. When the Pan-African Parliament said, was it earlier this year, we saw with Malema and others how they were going at it against each other. So we already have internal issues as regional blocs, but now we have this fragmentation happening. Who should take a step, and how heavy-handed should we be to start to deal with that issue?
What it means for ECOWAS, I can't really say. What I'm talking about is what I see from where I sit in Ghana. I think they are in a problem. They've got a strategic problem. And it's a strategic problem that might eventually also affect the unity at the African Union. Let me not think for our leaders. I'm sure they will know how to handle these matters, but I think it needs to be nipped in the bud because it will also start affecting the African Continental Free Trade Area.
100%. And before I let you go, I quickly just want to tap into that institutional memory and the experience as a career diplomat. We're seeing that there's a lot of flaring up that's taking place. I think the challenge for multilateralism is not only for the African continent, but we see, of course, the NATO's, United Nations, etc., etc. Is multilateralism really in danger as we currently stand, or are we just, screaming out alarm bells? So should we be concerned as a globe in as far as where our multilateralism is standing?
I think we should be concerned. We have been concerned, and as the Secretary General of the United Nations have recently so aptly put it, I think multilateralism is in a crisis. Why is it in a crisis? It's because of the double standards on the international scene. Take, for example, the United Nations Charter. I mean, honestly, everybody is doing what they want to do. Look at the conflict in Ukraine. That is double standards. If you remember, in 1956, the Soviet Union then was thinking of putting missiles on Cuba. And that's why we talk about the missile crisis.
The Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yes, exactly. What was the result? It's an economic embargo that is still in place until today. Why? Because the United States felt that, you cannot put missiles in my backyard. Now,
contrary to what they are
doing. Now to what is happening in Europe, where you want to accept this country into NATO, and Russia also feels that, wait a minute, let's remember what happened in 1956. So I'm now talking in my national capacity as a citizen of the world, not as the High Commissioner of Namibia. So I think the double standards, and the smaller countries are getting tired.
BRICS?
You see?
Would they? Is that the pushback that we need?
I think that's the alternative that is happening. That maybe let's look at an alternative where we'll all consider ourselves as equal, because the mother body that we have known so far is not delivering for us.
Ambassador Musavyi, we could sit here and speak politics all night, but thank you so much for making time out to join us.
Thank you for having me.
That is, of course, our ambassador to Ghana, Ambassador Musavyi, just giving us some details with regards to our relations between Ghana and Namibia, a conversation that we could have for hours on end. But once again, thank you so much for making time out to join us for Diplomatic Communique. Join us again next time, same place, same time.